Hey everyone, welcome to the Torah Matinee SHIUR. Um, there's a weed whacker going in the background. I just noticed that. Should I wait? Such is life. I don't know. Like, if we spent all our time waiting to get everything we wanted, we'd spend all our time waiting, wouldn't we? Alrighty then. So, Parshat Metzora. But first off, I hope everybody had a nice Shabbat. I had a really nice Shabbat. You know, just kind of piled up the books and took some nice walks. Ate really good food. Have a super koradato to the people who are nice to me and treat me well and I have an opportunity to learn Torah and I do that and it's a good thing. Something I do that really helps me lately. I've you know, this whole coronavirus thing has given us permission to do things that we wouldn't do otherwise. Zoom meetings, Zoom Minion, uh, these Devar Torahs. The coronavirus gave validity to a video voice, and and the first time I did it was just kind of a whim, and I've found that it's just so much easier for me to just give it over than to write it down. All I have to do is do a skeletal outline of, like in front of me. I have this spread out, like just like all this stuff. I just have to. My notes just remind me of where the sources lie. And it's a beautiful thing. Um, and after Shabbat, I write the notes, and that's the Torah matinee. So it was Parshat Metzora. It was Tazri and Metzora, but this week was kind of special. I had time, and I did one of these classes before Shabbat, and then so it's a double portion. I'll catch the rest of it now. But I was saying that I have some new habits. One of them is I've really I've been hanging around at TORAHanytime.com. It's a great place for streaming videos that give a lot of hizuk, a lot of strength to carry on, in difficult times. And I have some speakers I really like, and Rabbi Mizrahi, Rabbi Harari, Rabbi Zitron, um, and then I find just really just great stuff on there. Like when I went to the Siyum Shas in Oak Park with Caleb, we heard a talk from Rav Kotler, the Rosh Yeshiva at Lakewood, and I was really moved by it, and then I couldn't believe it. It was like on Torah Anytime, you know, and some great talks from Rav Dr. Avram Twersky. Um, it goes on and on. How many just fantastic things that I can learn while I'm doing my work. It just streams in. Amazing. And so something happened, and I want to talk about this. Is that uh, I did one of these shiurim, after the Shabbos when my dad died, and and it caught the eye of my first rabbi, my teacher, Rabbi Daniel Koropkin, who's out in Toronto now, and he shared it out to his people. Here's a guy who's he's a ger, and after all these years and everything he's been through, the fire of Torah is burning in him still. And his people sent me notes of consolation, and it was really a nice boost in the whole thing. And he mentioned that, we reconnected through Facebook. And that's really very true, I try to curate my feed and just have it be a good influence. And got a couple friend requests from real Kosovo people, through Rabbi Kropkin's, sharing of my post. And I don't know, it's like the rest of life. If you fill your feed with good and wholesome things and curate out the people who are harmful, then it turns Facebook into a really positive experience, and I see that these videos get views, and there's no way of knowing who watches them, and we're going to talk about how I function in a world of kind of zero feedback, um, and we're going to talk about that. Um, but we were talking about Rabbi Daniel Koropkin, and so I've been slugging my way through his translation of the Kuzari for just ever. I had the Aronson edition, and then I just couldn't wrap my head around it. And later, I got, in the last couple of years, I bought the Feldheim edition, and I really I worked my way like a good halfway through that thing, and in a really thoughtful process of learning. And I got an email, or somehow I was doing web research, or typed in, my rabbi's name into Google, which brings up quite a thing. And so I saw that the OU is hosting him speaking on the Kuzari, and so I went and downloaded, kind of on a download binge right now, and I'm formatting these and listening to them on my phone, and getting a real charge, from hearing my rabbi's voice in learning. And so just a real cordato to Rabbi Daniel Kropkin, and all the rebbeim, here in Monterey, Rabbi David Holtzberg at the Chabad of Monterey. So it's been an incredible source of support. And sometimes we don't show the cordato we do. Sometimes we're actually not grateful. And, it's to my shame that, anything I ever did to offend the community here in Monterey. All right. So with that said, I listened to TORAHAnytime.com, and one guy I really like is Rabbi Zitron, and he was talking about how that what if God had an app that no, wow, I already messed up the story. What if you could go to the App Store and download an app that would let you read people's minds? Would you want that? Would you want to read people's minds? And the rabbi posited that most people couldn't handle other people's thoughts, that you'd go crazy for sure. And and if God had this app, which he does, well, you'd be pretty careful to guard your thoughts, right? Like if you knew that other people had this app, maybe you could learn to control your thoughts. Well, good luck with that. And God already has the app, and so you don't know how to control your thoughts. So God knows all the time. Okay, so that's a kind of a funny thing. Like the way Rabbi Zitron described it was, when kids are growing up, they play a game, right? Like I'll play it with you right now. Peekaboo. Well, I can't see you, right? But you can totally see me. You can see the back of my hands, my shoulders, my arms. I'm not hidden at all. Peekaboo. The only person who wasn't seen there was me. Um, So, right, there's two different experiences here. Then the experience that a person has when that they feel like they're hiding, and the reality that they're not hiding at all. And so the connection that Rabbi Zitron drew between these two states is kind of the difference between emuna and bitachon. And I'd like my talk to kind of hover around these two concepts today, emuna and bitachon. So emuna comes from something like your mother says to you, "Don't touch fire; it's dangerous." So intellectually, you believe that thing, um, but one day you say, "Oh, psh, what's she know?" So you touch fire and burn your finger. Now you enter into a situation of bitachon, right? You know that when you touch fire, that you're going to get burned, right? So emuna is believing what you believe because you trust the source from which you believe you learned it. And religious people have a lot of that, right? You trust the source, and so you believe. Um, Bitachon, on the other hand, is a knowing that comes from personal experience, and and my personal experience has been, in the last few weeks has been that God has an app, and it's on record. So something I've had to intellectualize then is, why am I doing this? And the last post that I did on Facebook, I shared the YouTube, and that's just how this works. Um, and so YouTube, I made the video and I put some comments in there. I didn't really feel like repeating the same comments when I shared it to Facebook. So when I shared it to Facebook, I said, I really have to examine my motives in doing this. And then I went into Shabbos Metzora, which was also Rosh Chodesh, and and that's what I thought about. What is my motive in this? So I asked somebody that that I really trust, and she said that Torah involves learning for sure. Torah involves doing, but then there's a third component too, which is the teaching. And teaching is kind of my thing, and so I feel compelled to teach, and um, so I just have to convince myself that the reason that I'm doing this is in order to spread some sort of universal truth that people can grasp onto and learn something that's useful, and that it's for for the good of the world. It's for the glory of Hashem, and to spread useful information that comes from my Torah, and what do I get from it? Well, I get the ability to get it off my chest because I'm a teacher and I'm the storyteller, and that's the role. I write for a living, and apparently I speak Devar Torah. um, so so the thing that I've been thinking about then, this duality issue of why do I do what I do, and I need it to be for the glory of Hashem instead of for my own glorification. Um, that I think about my prayers a lot lately. There was a long time that I only wanted to pray in Hebrew because I'm a convert, and so English to me just wasn't a language of prayer, and I would pray in Hebrew, and my Hebrew just never was so good, and I was a total beginner. I didn't even learn the Aleph Bet until I was like 31, and I learned it from conservative Jews, and I took a Hebrew class with Rabbi Bogopolsky in San Diego, which was very helpful. Um, my good friend Rachel has just been so patient, and and so my Machzor from Pesach has an English translation, Sephardi Machzor, and because Pesach has Chol HaMoed days, then by using this Machzor, I have English translations of pretty much all the davening, except one paragraph of the Chol HaMoed, Shachari, like one right Brachas of the Shema. That's one paragraph that isn't in the Machzor. In English. And so what that means is, my Hebrew's gotten good, at least when it comes to tefillah, and so I can really ponder the meaning of the words now. And wow, what a difference that makes to me to pray, in Hebrew, but just really be able to beseech Hashem, with the words I'm saying. Wow, it's made such a difference. And Rabbi Zitron said this, that that God doesn't answer prayers like just flat out, like like Stam. Like if you say, I want this, sometimes there's a process involved, and in the act of praying, we personally change and become worthy of the thing that we're praying for. And sometimes it takes a long time for our prayers to get answered. And and sometimes they get answered in unexpected ways, and we're going to talk about that. Okay, but the idea that I pull out of the davening is a part where it says that a person needs to be honest, that they need to act the same way both publicly and privately. That there are no secret sins, Rav Twersky talked about internet pornography, and how in the privacy of your own handheld device, that Bachurim just get like addicted to internet porn. That's just so sad, and right, publicly as well as privately, it's the battle that we fight, and our Yetzer Hara is strong, and it's just sneaky, but just but we keep in mind that that we're not in this alone, and that there's help if if we want it. And right on, man. Right, like we were talking about, how we act in private. Wow, I'm sorry, just a minute. All right, sorry about that. So, I've been known to rant. So, weed whackers are really do save a lot of work. I've edged with scissors. But then again, I've cut my hair with a butter knife. So it is. But those blower things, wow, they annoy me. They really annoy me. And especially since the place where I do my work has a little gap in the door, and it goes all the way along, the front of the door. So he brings his blower, and he just blows everything under the door, like right into my workspace. And so fortunately, I'm in my workspace a lot of the time. So when I hear him coming, I take some of my paintings and I line them up, like I stack them against the bottom of the door. And then when he comes, it blocks it. But like, I guess he was frustrated one day, and he just couldn't get it to work right, and he was blowing so hard that the paintings like fell over. Okay, so anyway, that's my rant. Gee whiz, I don't know where I was. I was talking about secret sins, I guess, and so secret sins are something that that are dealt with really in great depth if you're serious about any sort of 12-step program. Secret sins are the root of any sort of self-help. Because if you're not honest about your character and you don't even know what your character is, then what's a person to do? And we were talking about how a person acts privately. Well, in 12-step work, especially with addicts, we know how it works. We go into isolation. Just about the very first thing we do is go away from other people so that we can do our thing without being bothered. And this situation that we all find ourselves in of isolation, that's imposed on us, it has a different flavor of isolation. It's not so desperate. It's 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 what I referred to earlier as just a situation of low feedback. And like this year is just a perfect example of that. Like, I don't get any comments about the content. Like, oh, you brought up a point, and I've been thinking about it. Like, I don't know if anybody even, I don't know what he thinks about this. Like, if YouTube, when do they count the view? Do you have to make it all the way through? We get through the first 4 seconds, like what? What's a view anyway? And are people actually listening, or are all those views just me? What's funny is, I listen to my own Devar Torah because I really need to know, like, am I full of it? Like, am I a liar? And I listen to them just just to hear what I'm saying. This isn't written. I don't know what's gonna. I don't. But anyway, I give this shiur in kind of a world of zero feedback, and it's an imposed isolation. It's an expression of isolation, and I talk about secret sins. And how does it all tie into coronavirus? With the example of the Metzora, right? So that's where we're going, and that's where we've been for quite some time. But I see my program friends. We don't go to meetings anymore. There are no meetings, and but I see them, and something they say in most every conversation is, I'm sure glad I learned what I did when I did, because now I know it, and that's the difference between bitachon and, that knowingness, right? I had plenty of amuna when I was sitting in the room, sitting there with my friends, sitting in a meeting, secretary, hey, I have a coffee commitment, yay. But, in the absence of all of that, I needed to move from Amuna. I needed to move away from believing, and I had to know, right? And enter into bitachon, where I can do this, like, I have the power. I'm not alone. I have strength. I have reserves. If I pray, I'll learn. What's funny is, in the last video, I was watching it, and, I do this thing where I move, and I'm not the only Jew who does that. And, but I was noticing that, because I'm bald, that the light would reflect in the camera was fading in and out of, not focus, but, the light density thing. And, and I just had to laugh. Like, there's not much I can do about my bald head. Yeah, I could put on a hat, and then you're like, oh, so maybe that's why the frum rabbis, they give the shiurim with their kippah like this. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oi. Alrighty then. So glad I learned I did what I did when I did. All right. So the pasuk that we're going to look at concerns the Metzora. It says, Zot tehiyeh Torat HaMetzora, right? This shall be the law of the Metzora. And the Metzora concerns itself, the Metzora concerns itself with removing the contamination of a person who gets harassed, right? So that's the context from which within we see the Metzora. So it says at the end of the pusik. Wow, my eyes are just not what they once were. It says Vehuva el ha kohen, right? He shall be brought to the kohen. So the Metzora is brought to the kohen, and there's a lot of components to the purification process. There's his actual purification that I spoke about in the last year, where we take the bird and the spring water and the cedar wood and the hyssop branch and the crimson thread, and we use that for a physical procedure. Then the Metzora goes through a second stage where, gee whiz, I don't think I want to talk about all the components of it. There's a lot of different components. It involves, oil and his ear and his toe and a lot of stuff. you know, if you want to read it, it's in the Vaikra, which is the book of Leviticus. The Metzora portion is chapter 14. But the point that I'm going to talk about is how he's brought to the Kohen. Rashi says that Zot Torah, right? So right, that it's done on the daytime. Okay, so that's Rashi. It's not so much to swallow. But the idea that it needs to be brought to the Kohen, though, is something that Chazal kind of takes a look at. Sforno brings an idea that, well, he doesn't get brought into the camp. He's a Metzora. He's still Tame. He's outside the camp. But the Kohen's kind of a distinguished sort. Well, he is a distinguished sort. It's not befitting of the Kohen to go wandering around outside the camp, looking for so and so. Although he'd probably be glad to, but bringing him to the Kohen means that somebody sets it up. Hey, okay, so I'm going to bring him at 2:00. I'm going to see you over at the the SHIUR, whatever, and I'll bring him. Okay, so then the Kohen comes, and they begin a process. So Rob Pliskin, I really love this book, Growth Through Torah, fantastic book. Rob Pliskin, this book is especially special. Got it from Uncle Marty. Only good things from Uncle Marty. Man, I wish I could see you. So, so Rob Pliskin talks about this idea that the person needs to be brought to the Kohen, right? Why does he need to be brought? Well, because by this point, he had already had the humiliation of Saras. He had already gone through the teshuvah process of being, outside the camp and living like a Metzora. Now, he's better. So, dodge the Kohen. Then you don't have to bring the korbanah, right? A sense of ingratitude in that, isn't that? Right. So you go through a whole process, and then it's like dine and dash, right? Come in, you eat your pancakes, and then run out without pain. It's kind of the same thing, that once the Metzora starts feeling, that he no longer has consequences to his spiritual condition, then then at this point, it may become difficult for him to live up to his obligation. He may forget that he has an obligation. Um, so Rob Pleskin suggests that even these days, a person doesn't have to have saras in order to to forget their responsibilities. Right? Like say there's something that you want some from somebody, or maybe you want to win somebody's respect, or get a job. You know, you may make certain promises, right? But when it, wow, I just thought of the president of the United States. So anyway, when it comes time to make good on your obligations, sometimes we avoid that. But what Rob Pliskin suggests is that if a person has integrity and they they'll derive pleasure from doing the right thing, that they'll actually seek opportunities to do the right thing, and and this will give them pleasure to meet their obligations. And so once a person gets to a point then where they reach pleasure from doing what they're obligated to do, then life no longer is work. Yeah, that's a that's a really high level, and Rob Dessler speaks about a person's personal madrega, this whole idea of honesty, of acting privately as well as publicly, and he kind of brings a kind of a downer. I mentioned in my last year that in order for a person to recognize that there's a higher power in play, and that there's there's some sort of plan in effect that I may not understand how it works, but I understand that I play a part in it, and that I have a part to play, and that I need to play that part, according to the role that I need to play, and if a person was to understand all of these things, they'd have to be like a prophet. They'd have to have Ruach HaKodesh to understand all of these things, right? And but Rob Dessler and I mentioned it, is that but we don't look to doctors and to medicines to cure us of our problems. Social distancing is a good thing to stop the spread of the coronavirus, but if a person gets sick or worse, um, that's in the hands of Hashem, and to get to the place where we look where we see our spiritual defects as the cause of our physical illness, that's a really high level. Um, and so I didn't mention this next part because it's just kind of a bummer. But he says, you know, we can't deceive ourselves into thinking that we're at that level, that we're at a much lower level, that our minds are diseased, that our mind is corrupted with false ideas, and our mind believes that physical forces have superiority over spiritual forces. So if a person believes these things, then it's really hard to grasp on to true spiritual thoughts, it needs to be a faith that's real. It needs to be a bitachon that's real. It needs to be an emunah that's based in reality, and so Rav Dessler, you have to excuse my pauses. Rav Dessler's a little bit deep, and that he's suggesting that a person needs to clarify to himself that that on the higher level, on the creator's level, on the level of a higher power, um, the world looks very different from how it looks to us. Our little piece and our little understanding of it, it goes much farther than that. And Rabbi Mizrahi was talking about how a decision in this life affects the next incarnation. You know, I don't know about that whole soul thing. I'm a convert. So, so the implication would be then that somewhere along the way, somebody needed to be born to Gentile parents and have punk rock and then skateboard empty swimming pools and start rock climbing crazy insane things and then just lose their partner, so then just go soloing and then later just get on their bike and ride off into oblivion. And you know right, like nobody could ever what's the plan in that? I don't know. um but if a person arms themselves against the confusion, then they can avoid misunderstandings about Hashem's Hashgacha Prati, Hashgacha Kalit. The Hashem looks at the world on a larger, on a large scale, but then Jews don't believe that God's involved in like every part of it. I mean, somebody said in one of the shiurim that each blade of grass grows on an individual command from God. This you shall grow. Like that micromanagement. I'm not involved in that. Like if I was supposed to, remember to take in every breath, I'd be long dead. I'm way too distracted to think about something so basic. Esoteric things, but that's all I want to think about. Um, but Rob Dusser says, whoa, Nelly, stop, bring it back. That a person needs to act in accordance with their true spiritual level, um, right, and to perfect yourself at the place where you're holding, and then you can dream of rising to a higher level, right? You don't just jump right into the fire. Um, in Judaism, we call it, Bali Teshuvah, a person who's newly religious. In, AA, he's the newcomer, and the newcomer rides on a pink cloud. And, and push comes to shove when it all comes crashing down, what are you going to do? Are you gonna live a principled life, or just cave? And that's the basic question in this world. And so I've been kind of taking this idea to heart, that God's got the read your mind app, and it's on record, and the camera's running, dude. There's no secret space. There's no place to hide, even in this social isolation. I'm not hiding now. I'm in plain sight, and if you want to watch this video, man, you'll hear everything that's on my mind. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing, right? So if we're going to talk about, God's apps, Rabbi Mizrahi suggested that we should think of God more like a GPS, that, all the routes are known at once. You just have to pick a destination and a suggestion will occur. The best part of GPS is if you miss the turn, it recalculates. Sometimes you really get bonked. Like, like one time I was driving in, I don't know, the 405. I missed something or other, and I went off in, and I thought I'd take a shortcut across the city, and the direction was wrong, and the street's angled, and I couldn't find the on ramp. And wow, you know, recalculate means a lot of things. Recalculate that obligation you're trying to meet, recalculate the relationship you're trying to save, recalculate the importance of the thing you're trying to accomplish, right? GPS. Um, that when an opportunity's missed, um, you missed it. you know but God's GPS recalculates, and God's patient and kind, and if we pray, we change, and we become worthy of the things that we want, and we become accepting of the things we have, and then we get to leave a state of being outside the camp. We get to come back into the fold. We're no longer isolated. And we come back in with a new sense of gratitude that, how could I have ever felt that way? How could I have ever acted that way? I'm embarrassed. I'm disappointed that I let you down, that I didn't do my part, that I made selfish decisions. And like, there's no place for regret in this world, because life only moves forward. And so may we all have the strength to just know the right thing, and privately as well as publicly, just to have the same face. Have the heart match the eyes, the hands will follow, the feet will follow, and we'll get through this. And I suppose that's it for now. Wow, 42 minutes. What kind of upload is that going to be? Okay, so Hazaka Baruch. Okay.